Okay, so in the next section, Washington outlines some stages of cultural competence, and there are 6 stages. The first one is cultural destructiveness. The second one is cultural incapacity. The third one is cultural blindness. The fourth one is cultural precompetence. The fifth one is cultural competence. And the sixth one is cultural proficiency. So let's unpack what each of those are. Okay, so the first one, cultural destructiveness. So cultural destructiveness is when your ways of being, your ways of acting, and engaging with other cultures are destructive to that culture or to the individuals within a particular culture. So some examples that were given by Washington are homophobia, misogyny, and white supremacy. Those examples are given on page 215. In stage 2, in cultural incapacity, this stage has people in it who are not necessarily trying to be destructive, but are unable to actually provide help to marginalized groups. Now, some examples of cultural incapacity include some of the fears that some people have around other cultures, and how those can extend into different hiring practices or microaggressions or expectations of other cultures and groups of people. All right, so the third stage is cultural blindness. So this is characterized primarily by assimilation and ignoring different strengths of different cultures. So for example, instead of highlighting and encouraging differences being shared across different cultures, we instead try and homogenize everything by getting marginalized groups to all conform to the dominant culture. So this is equivalent to people who are saying, I don't see color, everyone's the same to me, and the denial that you have bias. Which, by the way, I'll include a link in the show notes to an unconscious bias test that you can take in a variety of different categories to actually learn more about some of the biases that you do have. So, for example, I took a couple of them and found out that I had some biases that I was aware of, as well as some others that I was surprised about. Now, one of the interesting things that's related to this particular stage is there can be a lot of victim blaming in terms of not understanding why some people from different cultures are unable to assimilate or align with the dominant cultures. And success is viewed within this stage as, quote, how closely marginalized groups can approximate middle-class, non-minority existence, end quote. That's from page 215. Okay, now we're going to move on to the more positive side of this continuum, or stages. So the fourth stage is cultural precompetence. So this is the stage where I think a lot of people are in right now in terms of what's going on with learning more and trying to do something in particular related to racism in education and in society. So cultural precompetence involves people who are making intentional efforts. From an organizational level, they might be hiring intentionally for diverse perspectives and experiences. However, in this stage, it can stop here with this false sense of accomplishment that Washington describes, or even a tokenism of different cultures or marginalized groups. Because it doesn't actually respect and value cultures, it's just learning more and understanding about them, but not necessarily playing to their strengths. In stage 5, however, which is called cultural competence, here's a quote from page 215, quote, organizations actively hire unbiased employees, constantly work to improve practices, and seek the expertise of marginalized groups to better assess how to meet their needs. Many components of this stage include an understanding of the effects of policy on practice and actively working to ensure that enacted policies support a diverse and inclusive environment, end quote. So it's not enough to just learn about different cultures and to be an ally for different cultures. You need to actively reflect upon the different practices and policies that can impact having a diverse and inclusive environment. One of the things that I would argue against, though, is actively trying to hire unbiased employees. Again, I think is impossible because we all have these unconscious biases. That being said, I think hiring people who are actively exploring their unconscious biases is something that can definitely be done. All right, so the last stage is called cultural proficiency. So this involves organizations who are just constantly trying to find diverse perspectives and experiences and people, and are constantly reevaluating what they're doing. This excerpt of the CSK8 podcast is from episode number 42, which is titled, When Twice as Good Isn't Enough, The Case for Cultural Competence in Computing. You can listen to the full episode as well as hundreds more by simply searching for the CSK8 podcast on your favorite podcast app or by going to jaredoleary.com.